Hello and welcome to the BNB show. My name is Brandon. This guy right over here is Brendon Nelson, Seahawks Brendon Nelson, back in the house over here at the Hawks Nest. Thank you, Brendon, for jumping on in here as we begin our truly begin our season. Off-season coverage turns over, and now we truly begin to get to talk about live football coverage. But thank you for coming on in here tonight, this fine Thursday night, as we're just about to begin.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Good to be here.
We got the opening match of the season here to preview in a second, with our Seahawks going up against a Rams foe that has been a bit of a pain in the rear since McVay has arrived there in recent seasons, but they certainly are looking more susceptible than ever for our Seahawks team to come out and not only take this game in this opening set, but take both of those games this year. Before that, let's talk a little bit about a couple of separate other items, though, here, Brennan, which is first off, we got some actual Seahawks news yesterday in regards to them creating cap space, converting the base of Jamal Adams to bonus, and creating and freeing up an additional $6.61 million of cap space, now giving them basically a functional $9 million of cap space to work with as we currently stand. So what were your thoughts on that deal as far as when you heard it? What kind of went through your mind first before we get into what this might mean?
Oh, I think my first thought was there has to be some other move coming. There has to be some reaction to this. There's got to be a reason here, right? Because you have now reduced your flexibility with Jamal Adams going forward pretty significantly by making this move. Next year, he goes from being eminently releasable to not very releasable at all. So I understand this team loves Jamal and probably believes Jamal is going to have a great season this year and restore confidence in him. And I understand that. I'm sure Carroll loves him. I'm sure Carroll has this idea in his head of Jamal Adams spearheading an elite defense here. But we removed that flexibility when we simply didn't have to. So there's got to be some reason why you did this. And you went all the way with it. You went all the way down to minimum base salary, 1.08. If you were just trying to clear enough cap space for maintenance purposes throughout the season, you maybe would have restructured $2 million, right? You would have cleared $2 million and made like $4 million in cap space. You would be like, okay, that's got to be enough for now. That's got to be good enough. But no, you went all the way with it. You don't need 9 to 10 million in cap space to do maintenance on your roster throughout the course of a season. That's overkill.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm just wondering what the next move is going to be, because I feel pretty confident that there is going to be another move. I don't know what it's going to be exactly. It could be as simple as signing a veteran on the defensive line. Maybe we're doing something where we're waiting until after week 1 to do that, because that way we don't have to guarantee their whole salary. But I do feel pretty confident that something is going to go down in response to this salary cap move.
Yeah, I saw it the same way. It does speak to the team having a lot of confidence in Jamal's health situation. We can read a few things into this, and I think that's one of the things, is that they look at his prognosis coming back from this major injury and believe that it is one that he's going to be able to overcome. And so that should give us some encouragement. It is a risk, though, no doubt about that. I think that they have a little bit of some built-in flexibility here, Brendan, where, if they want in this situation, you can convert the base to bonus. And if you end up going out through the rest of the season and you only do use the $4 to $5 million of it, you could roll over the additional money you have. And then it all becomes basically very similar, like you're talking about that, where you're still splitting some of it to be able to eat up if you want to do the release. So I mean, it's going to be still hard to get it done if you wanted to do it with Jamal. And you would still save money technically moving him next year. It's $26 million. He's open cost. You save $6 million by moving on from him.
For you to do that, though, you must believe his career is just over at that point. Like, he literally can't play anymore. Yeah.
Right. Which is not what I think the team would lean towards, but I'm talking about more of a worst case scenario. Like, if it went to where, okay, he tears his other ligament, or whatever new injury could come down the track, now he's truly shot. You do have a method to get out from under it. And if I'm not mistaken, at that time, they could probably post June 1st designate him to where you could probably split those dead money costs over a 2-year period, if I'm not mistaken on how that rolls out, and usually how you can do that. So it does marry them. It does. I do agree with you on this 100%, though, in that there's a move coming. They did not do this, in my opinion, to sit on the money to roll it over. I know I just mentioned that's a possibility of what they could do, but I don't think that that's what they're looking to do here. I think that there's a move coming in addition. You may be somebody, it's hard to say here. This is where I get pressed a lot. I'm sure you do, about what's the move. Was it Buckner? Are they going to trade for Jones? It's really hard to say from our perspective on this where they're leaning towards or how they would look to want to go on this, because it could be anything. It could be all the way up to the trade deadline that they finally decide to make some kind of move and pull. John's just sort of waiting in the weeds until something jumps down that's really nice. So it is hard to pinpoint where they're going to do it. But I'm really with you. The gut instinct on this was that something else is coming. This is not it. It's not over with now. This isn't just done. It's good to go, so to speak.
Yeah. And again, it could be something as innocuous as, we're going to sign Chris Wormley for $3 million. We're going to sign Matt Ioannidis for $3 million, somebody like that. But I do believe there is some possibility we're going to take a big swing at things. There are some bigger names you could go for. Now, if you do that, you are putting yourself in a very bad situation next year salary cap wise, which is why I'm a little hesitant to believe we're going to do that, and also why I'm not sure I even want to do that. Like, you are putting yourself in a 49er type of situation next year, because I don't know if you've seen the 49ers books, but right now their entire cap is taken up by like 7 players. Like, you'd be not far off, because Geno's money is kicking in, Draymond's money is kicking in, DK's money is kicking in, Lockett's money kicking in. You are going to be capped out very quickly next year if you trade for Buckner and then extend him. Because if you did that first year cap hit would have to be very low to fit him in. We have 10 million. You're going to need at least 3 million for the season. So that first year cap hit's got to be 7 on an extension that's probably going to be 23 million per. Like that. Yeah. That's a lot. That's overextending yourself for sure. And if you have the opportunity to do it and you think you can win the Super Bowl with it, I'm not saying you don't do it. But at the same time, I'm aware that your window shrinks to a very small one if you do that. So I'm still hesitant to believe that's coming, but I do believe it's at least on the table.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of possibilities here to the way this rolls out, and they're not stuck down the track of it having to be a low-end option only. It would be hard if you want to go big. It would test this team and Schneider and his ability to get creative down the road if they do that. No doubt about that. But at the same point in time, if you, like you say, the key on this one is as I was saying last night on my stream with this, Brendon, know thyself. What are you as a team? Where are you as a team? Where's the landscape of the other teams across the National Football League and the NFC and the NFC West, and then make your determination from there. And if you're going to be aggressive and have gutsiness, I'm going to be in favor of that because they've made that determination in my mind. So we'll see if it's a big move coming down or not on this, Brendon, but there is something coming. I think that it's going to be hard to do the big one like you talk about for the cost and trying to find things to make it work money-wise. But I do think you can get creative with it. I do think that there's some ways to get creative pushing stuff down the road a bit with this if you determine that the team's ready to roll. If it's good enough, if, hey, we got this one other guy with what's going on across the rest of the NFC, we could take this conference over, with this move. I could get where they could land on that if they do make the big swing. But I also like, too, just them sitting back on waiting to the trade deadline and just rolling the dice on there being something that's going to, hit at that point, Brendon.
Yeah, that's possible too. We could be waiting for a while on the payoff here. Like, be prepared for that possibility for sure.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't mean it's also necessarily right en route. It can mean now, it can mean later. But it does mean, by Brendon Mind's standpoint, something is at some point coming, one way or the other. They probably didn't do this just for the hell of it, or to roll the money over next year they don't use. We've got a couple of injury updates, Brendon, if you can break us down a few of these, including a little bit of a surprise one from our starting running back here today that caught people a little bit off guard. Myself, for my fantasy team with Kenneth Walker, wasn't happy to see that one. You got any updates for us on the injury front of things?
Well, in terms of Kenneth Walker, all I know is that he's listed on the injury report. And the thing is, it's another groin thing. And this is something that goes back to last year with him. So I think people are right to be concerned about this. Is this just going to become a permanent thing with him? Is this just his weakness as a player? I can't really say too much more than that right now. It's too early to say anything else. For all we know, he's not even listed on the injury report tomorrow. And this was just a glorified day off, basically, for him, or a partial day off.
Yeah.
But as of right now, I think there is some reason to be concerned. Not so much missing this game. I don't think he's going to miss this game. I don't. But it's about long-term. Is he going to be battling this for the rest of this season? I think that part of it is something to think about for sure.
Yeah, and those groin injuries can get worse. They don't just stay in the same spot, do they? I mean, that's part of why you want it to heal up fully, is that going out there and going on it can make it go sideways even much more further there. So hopefully he does play on that. It does look like you're gonna get at least probably a split carries if he is working through it still, where you're gonna get a heavy dose of probably Zach Charbonnet on the other side of it, along with him if he is. But it's also hard to turn because they didn't. Everything was referenced that he's been doing full steam. He's not been inhibited or limited in practice at all, Brendan. So I know that part was, kind of a bit odd to me in that respect of things, that he just suddenly popped up where we hadn't heard anything from it on that. But that happens with these kind of things. Anything else as far as injury news over on our side of things here?
Damian Lewis didn't practice today. That was the one new thing that came up. No real reason to believe that it's anything super significant yet. It could have just been, again, a glorified day off where you're like, this tiny little thing that couldn't possibly matter technically is acting up. So let's list it as that, but it's really just kind of a veteran day off. Jordan Brooks got the day off, but I think we can kind of expect things to kind of move slowly for him, and there's nothing wrong with that. Boye Mafe was ill, but typically NFL players get through illnesses in like 3 days. They've got that super medicine.
Oh, they give them the injection of all the good stuff. Yeah. Go in the oxygen tank. It's all of it. You get the full meal deal with that.
And I think that's mostly. Oh, well, there's the good news. Darrell Taylor and Mike Morris were full participants today.
There we go. We got him back in the fold.
Yeah, and the Rams injury report's really easy. Kupp is out, Stetson Bennett's out, and Hunter Long's out, and that's it. So their injury report's actually really, really simple to navigate.
Very simple, very easy on that one to navigate for sure. It is in the shape it kind of is. So at least we know Stetson Bennett's not going to come out as a rookie and dice us up if Stafford gets something going on with his back and goes, just tears us apart as a rookie or some weird story like that. But they're not too expensive. But the Cup one though, Brendan, that's a pretty big. That's a big hit for that Ram team, is it not?
Oh yeah, it's maybe the biggest hit possible. Maybe at this point he may be their best player. I don't know. It's interesting debate there you could have with him and Donald. I think Kupp might be their best player because he still is pretty much in his prime. Donald, I think, clearly isn't. And also, you look at it, I think that Rams team is going to be kind of driven by their offense this year because of the coaching and because of where they do have a few decent players on that offensive side of the ball. They need to be able to score because I don't think they're going to be able to stop anybody this year.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I was looking at their defensive metrics, Brendan, and we'll definitely be getting this on our breakdown. There's not a lot for them from last year to hang their hat on as far as, well, we do this, we get turnovers, or offensively we generate big plays, or we run the ball with a good level of efficiency. You go up and down on this team, backwards to front, left to right from last year, and trying to look to this season where they're even weaker from last year in so many respects. And it is hard as you work up into this game to find that fear point. But Cooper Kupp, Stafford, working with all these young receivers, he talked about, Brendan, he talked about having in training camp to get what he was getting, like name tags or something, wasn't he, for his receivers, something like that?
Yeah, I heard about that. It was like he said, I can't connect with these guys because I'm part of a different generation or something.
Yeah, exactly. So, he was probably really looking to have Kupp there as the guy that he could, really lean on him. We already know that he tended to lean on him quite a bit all the time as it was anyway. So, I mean, he loved Kupp. Those two guys synced up from the moment Stafford got there. Those guys were on the same page, and just kind of incredible there. So, well, let's start diving into this matchup. I think that, Brendan, this is a tough one for us to break down because from analyzing this from my perspective of it, I'm sure you feel much the same way. Rams have leaned into this tank, and they did so before you had Cooper Kupp out of this game. They've taken this team down to the studs. They're looking to rebuild everything from the top up here, or bottom up, and they're just getting started in their process. Rookies across the board, dead money on the books, old quarterbacks like Stafford, who you think are probably just one play away from being like, I think I'm about ready to call it a day here. Well, where's your fear level coming into this game? I mean, do you stand in here pretty supremely confident here? On this one,
it's my fear level's low. I don't think it makes sense to be any other way. You look at this team, you look at the arrangement of talent or lack of talent that they have. I don't think it makes sense to really feel any other way than you should win this game pretty easily. You should feel good about this game and understand that we're fans. We can feel however we want to feel about a game, and it doesn't affect anything. It's on the players to take this game seriously. So when I talk about how easy this game is, this is me speaking as a fan. That's not me saying, oh, the team just needs to sleepwalk through this game. Of course, this is the NFL. You can't do that. I understand that, but I know that the discrepancy in talent between our team and their team is pretty massive. It's on the level of like something you might see in college football, which you so rarely see in the NFL. But this is an instance where we've got a couple teams that it's not quite Tennessee, Chattanooga playing Alabama, but maybe it's like Northwestern most years playing Alabama or something. It's just not really fair.
Yeah, that's where I've gotten that pushback too in mentioning in this one, that I just see it as one where you've got this game right and left. It should be a 2-touchdown game. And I understand it's the NFL and that these teams, are very closely aligned, parity in the sport more than any other sport. All that's true. But like you talk about, this is the Rams team that's in a unique situation of being more weakened than we've seen them in recent years, as weak as any NFL team as we've seen in recent years, by how they're set up, by how they've gone through the real forceful standpoint of saying, hey, we're gonna come out here and try to return this over as quickly as possible, but that means we're taking everything down. And it's an interesting strategy on their part. And boy, Mahomes tonight just can't get any of his receivers to catch.
He's got a team full of Dwayne Eskridges.
Yeah, he's putting some passes on spots, but nobody's catching any passes there. As it looks like the Chiefs are looking like they're maybe going to go down here in the fourth quarter. So that was
we're playing a Lions team in week 2 who coming off a pretty big one.
Looks like they're going to be coming off a big win here. I mean, they still got to close it up now, but they brought this one back. It looked like Chiefs kind of had this in the second half, but the Lions have brought this back on into the fold. Well, let's take a look. Let's take a look first at the offensive side of the ball here for the Rams and getting to specifics on this. We have Stafford still out there rolling, coming off the major back injury from last year, wondering where he's kind of at as far as the state of him. Cam Akers, a guy that in the playoff game against the Seahawks a couple of years ago gave him some issues. It's never really been, for a guy taken in the second round, I think that's super of a dynamic of a back for them. He's always been around the low 4-yard per carry average range of things. Maybe not having the greatest offensive line in front of him to run block for, but certainly not the most dynamic guy. Then we're going to get Van Jefferson and Tutu Atwell as your wide receiver 1 and 2 in this game, with a mix of Puka Nacua and Ben Skoranek as kind of filling in around those guys, I think, with how they'll run that on that. So who should we, from a defensive standpoint with this offense, does it just come down to keeping Stafford from getting hot, or is it about let's take the running game away and make them one-dimensional, as Carroll tends to lean into doing when he faces any general offense? Where's your strategy for attacking this Rams offense?
Well, this is the side of the ball where they've actually got a little bit of something. They got Stafford, and I don't think Stafford's going to last that long, but he can probably last one game, right? He can probably make it through this one.
I would think.
Cam Akers has had moments. He's probably like the guy you would single out as being somebody who's hurt us before. Hurt us last year in that last game. I think he played pretty well in it, to my recollection.
He runs hard. He doesn't get necessarily a ton of big plays. He's not a guy that's to throw, but he'll get you the 3, 4-yard, 5-yard runs, where if it's there, he'll get it.
Yeah, and Van Jefferson, he had a decent season a couple years ago, like 800 yards. Decent, nothing over the top, giving you like 50 yards a game. I think he was like a second-round pick, so I don't know if he's lived up to that, but he's been all right. Higbee is a good tight end.
Mm-hmm.
And they got some pieces on that offensive line that are credible, like Brian Allen at center. He's been good. And Havenstein playing right tackle where he belongs. Pretty good.
Smart of them, because last year they'd moved him to left tackle. So getting him back to the right place that he should be, which is right tackle, they had him try to fill in for Whitworth, which just wasn't working for him. He got kind of exposed over on the left side. So yeah, they've smartened up, it looks like, with their approach with that. And I like the pick they got, Steve Avila, the kid out of TCU, I believe.
Yeah, TCU.
I thought he was step for step with Osiris Torrance as the 1-2 guard, best guards in this draft, maybe. and he should be a good fit for them. I look at this game, I go at them offensively, Brendan, as I look at it. I think the worry for me comes into play of stopping the run more than Stafford, first and foremost in this game. Because like you say, the offensive line is not bad, and they have Cam Akers there who will run it hard, and they could really just try to shorten this game down on you here, where they could just try to, we're going to run the ball and we're going to grind on you and we're going to make you prove you can stop the run. And we have a Seahawks team coming into this game with Cam Young having not played at all. No Brian Monet. I mean, I don't know how your nose tackle situation is going to work in this game, quite honestly. And so it's a little bit of an oddity. How's it good? I look at like where they could get us in this game is in the run game. And if they commit to it, especially at a high rate, which, if McVay thinks he can just attack it all day, why wouldn't he?
Yeah, so this is going to be kind of a test because this offseason, you knew that nose tackle was a problem and you chose to basically do nothing to really address it. You're betting on this ability to, how should I put this? Install a smaller and more athletic player in that position to make that work. And this is certainly not the first team that's tried to find a way through with a smaller, more athletic nose tackle. I remember the Cowboys a couple years ago were trying to do that. They would have really small nose tackles, guys like Jay Ratliff under Wade Phillips for years. And then even after that, when they had Rod Marinelli, he loved the idea of these small athletic nose tackles in the middle who were sub 300 pounds. But now you're going to actually see, does that actually work in practice? Is the juice worth the squeeze? You're obviously giving some stuff up. Is it worth what you're giving up? We're going to find out. We're going to find out starting in games like this, where the Rams are obviously not going to be able to throw on you the way that they would expect to with a guy like Cooper Kupp. So it's going to be a very interesting test of that philosophy.
Yeah, indeed it will be. And I think that without having really as much the threats on the outside, I'd love to see the Seahawks commit to a little bit more of the 8-man boxes in this game going up against this offense of the Rams because of that. I mean, Tutu Atwell's got some speed on the outside, but he's never really been known as a deep threat guy. I don't think Van Jefferson's a possession receiver type guy. He's not a take the top off guy. I want to force them to kind of, show me you can get over the top on us in this game. And I would love to see a little bit more of the cramped down boxes. If you're going to go lighter, commit a little bit more to me to the 8-man boxes at that print. That would be to me the transition you try to kind of commit to making if you're going to bring the lighter box down in there like they're going to do. But that's the part that I really lock in on. Stafford's a guy that if you forced him to be one-dimensional, he's always been a guy to me, even in games where he's going to throw for 300 yards, that he is going to give you a couple of throws a game if you can get him to throw for a high volume amount over the course of a game. You're going to get three throws that's going to hit your guys in the hands, and you're going to get an opportunity. Whether you intercept or not, it's on you, but he's that kind of quarterback. There's a few of these guys in the league that are like that, kind of that gunslingery mentality to things.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair to say. I am interested to see what they do with Puka Nacua because he was a guy I kind of had my eye on in the draft, and I wonder what McVay is going to do with him because McVay's a guy who's likely to understand how to utilize somebody with a little bit of a unique skill set like he does with Skowronek, who basically plays fullback.
Well, to your point, I think you look at Puka as probably being your Cooper Kupp role in this game because he is that skill set of that inside slot guy. And he was kind of a bit of a star for them throughout their camp period. He was really flashing. He was mentioned quite a bit with the Rams coming out of training camp. And so, he could be that guy that fills in for Kupp where they're actually able to get a reasonable facsimile for Kupp in this kid with what he can do and his skill set that he brings. He's an older player. He's one of those, I think, BYU guys, right? That's probably like 25, 26, something like that when he's coming in. But he's ready to roll then maybe also on the other side of that.
He's a former Husky too. I mean, he was a Husky transferred.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I think it'll be interesting to see what this guy can bring from their standpoint because that's the place where he will fill in is for Kupp. And if they have a guy that can be reasonably fill in there for Kupp on that, and they can generate a little bit of a ground game, they can give the Seahawks team just a little bit of trouble this upcoming week, especially for a guy like McVay. Let's not undersell this part too, as an offensive mind in this league, really understands how to attack Carroll defenses, really understands what Carroll's trying to accomplish on the defensive side of the ball and how to counter that. And that's part of Carroll changing some of these ways with the 3-4 defense, a little bit more of a pressure-based maybe package, maybe more 8-man fronts, maybe less of the cover 3 all the time. But offensively in this game, stopping the run and then not allowing him to beat you with like flood zone concepts everywhere, especially Jordan Brooks in the middle of the field, which is something that McVay has hammered Brooks with at times when they've played in recent years.
Right.
Running two receivers that are basically holding hands through a zone, and Brooks takes the first guy, and then the guy holding the hand on the backside just stops in the zone, and he's there wide open for a catch. So hopefully Hurt and the company are kind of building into plans this year in order how to maybe overcome that a little bit more better with some of the ways teams attack like McVay. He's been a very smart mind in that respect.
Right. I mean, honestly, if you look at our last several matchups against the Rams, our defense has played fairly well. Their offense has not really gone off. Like last year, okay, this year and last year you can kind of throw out because their offense was so bad it doesn't even really, it's not even an accomplishment, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the year the Rams won the Super Bowl, the defense played pretty well in both games, especially the second one. The offense just couldn't get anything going, so they swept us. And I think the defense got tired because the offense kept going 3 and out over and over, but the defense played good. They played okay in all 3 games in 2020, including the one game we won. We held them to actually 9 points. That was a really good game. So it seems like Carroll's kind of sort of starting to figure this out a little bit. To at least it's not like it was in 2018, 2019, where it's just a complete beatdown on that side of the ball. So I feel like he's kind of figured some stuff out here. So hopefully that holds.
Hopefully it does. Yeah, I agree with you there. It'd be nice if that continued to stay. And I think the new defense does translate better because it's not, McVay can't just lean into that old, you play 4-3 with a cover 3, 75% of the time. I know it's coming. This is where now you force him to have to be a little bit more active in his approach than just hammering that same thing over and over again as a method to counter that defensive structure. So we'll see if it holds along and true here with this. But those are really on for me offensively. The key is get McVay from being able to creatively get at you. So flood zone concepts for Brendon, leaning on fly sweeps like he did in that game last year. I mean, they weren't able to get the ground game going much between the tackles, but they must have gone to the fly sweeps 5 or 6 times, I think, in that second game against us at home. And we're able to get some yards off of it. And so, we've also got to play real disciplined as far as on those fly sweeps things and maintaining the gap integrity, because I think he's going to use that a lot this week as well. He's going to probably every trick in the book you're going to get from McVay this week that he's got.
Yeah. You don't think he's on the team tank? You don't think he's throwing games out there?
I will learn. I mean, I maybe I think they are tanking. I do, but I do need to see more proof that they're just going to fully lean in all the way into it, like they may very well do. And if you see them come out with a game plan that's not very creative, where they're not like if they don't run any fly sweeps, I will be coming at the back end of this game going, they're tanking. If you see one fly sweep over the course of it, they're tanking to me. Like that would be indicative of they weren't necessarily trying to really go out there and get this win this week. John Stillwell, thank you for the $50 donation. John, that is tremendous.
Oh, yeah.
Tremendous. Thank you so much for that dono. He says, I hope I'm wrong, but I've got a bad feeling about Walker as a long-term Seahawk for reasons not known to the rest of us.
I mean, I kind of feel like we do know the reasons. Like, I kind of feel like we're starting to get a little bit of evidence here that maybe a little bit of a what do they call it? Glass bull? Glass cannon? I don't know. But the point is, he's a little delicate, a little fragile. That's possible.
It certainly is possible, John. I remember last year with the foot injury, them saying something kind of casually. It was just sort of released out sort of subtly, but it was that he had been dealing with like that foot thing going back to even like a high school thing. So, it could be the case here, and it would explain a little bit more of going back to the second round for a running back after you just did the previous year. If there were some worries about that health holding up and that they didn't, want that, if not that that'd be a main reason that they would choose Charbonnet, but a partial reason of the process why you might do that if you have some of those worries there. So it potentially could be a concern for us, John. It's something to monitor and track and see if it continues to be an issue coming up as we go forward. So I agree with you, man. And I thank you for the $50 donation, man. You're very, very kind as always on that. I think it's worth monitoring on this kid as we go forward, because you don't often see teams go back to the second round in the draft for a running back too often. I've trusted that it's a value-based pick, and that's what drove them to do it. But that's not to say there couldn't be some other reasons in there too. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean it's got to be holy that.
We'll see. Maybe we'll never hear about his groin again. That'd be nice if we never had to hear about Ken Walker's groin again.
Yeah, Carroll just says something in the press conference like, well, we had to list something. If we rest him, we've got to list something. So we just were like, groin. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. But we'll see, John. We'll see. We'll definitely, if he has a hard time being banged up through this year, I think we can start to get a little bit more of that feeling of maybe that's a bit of the case of what we're dealing with here, even just to a small degree. But thank you for the $50 donation. Starting us off right tonight, John. Starting us off with a bang. So thank you, brother. And I hope you're having a good night and not working too hard out there. Tony Borges Silva, thank you for the $5 donation. Our run defense is really going to get tested when we play the Lions. Gibbs has looked really impressive.
He did play a pretty good game, and they're finding interesting ways to use him for sure.
Yeah, they've got a little bit of a same kind of thing that we've got here with the lightning and thunder approach and taking that track with it. You saw that tonight in their approach with what they were trying to do defensively speaking. You had David Montgomery, 21 carries, 74 yards. He looked like David Montgomery to me. Another guy that I've always just thought was just a guy that does not get me excited as a running back. Just another guy, definition of a jag to me as a player out there. Now Gibbs is a different kind of cat to me. 7 carries, 42 yards, 6 carries, 6 yard per carry average. That's a guy that if they start to finally decide, let's give Gibbs some more carries than this other guy, that's where that rushing attack the Lions to me gets way more dynamic. But that's a good offensive line. Rag now down in center, Decker left, Penny Sewell on the right, guards that can clear some space up front. And as they showed tonight, they can stay committed to it. 34 carries versus 35 passing attempts. They stayed balanced throughout the course of this game. So, you can't just think, well, it's going to be the Lions are just going to throw it all over the football field and I can count on that. Not necessarily. But Gibbs is a good player. He's a really good player. I thought he had shades of Chris Johnson, like a Chris Johnson-like gear to him. When he got up and going from 0 to get up to 100 miles an hour, it's like, wow, they get up there fast,
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, though, Tony. I do appreciate the donation on your side of things. So we got another one here. Got a little behind. Addison Shubble, thank you for the $2 donation. Says Kelsey is enough to flip that game to KC probably. Oh, yeah.
He's talking about the game tonight, right?
Yeah, so he's talking about the game tonight. Where if you're not as aware and you're just listening now, we had the Lions just took care of the Kansas City Chiefs 21-20. And a game where the Lions played a pretty good game. The Chiefs kind of let them off the hook. I feel like the Chiefs had a lot of drops in this game. Kadarius Toney alone had 3, including one that was taken back for a pick 6. They just kind of shot themselves in the foot today, did KC, especially the receiving core out there. Did Mahomes no favors. But yeah, if you have Kelsey, then Mahomes is probably targeting him 23 times in this game for about 220 yards.
Yeah, Mahomes is like the guy in the Twilight Zone who liked to read. He's got this great offensive line, this super expensive, well put together offensive line, and he's got nobody to throw to. There's time now.
Yeah, it's wild. You start going through the names. You got Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Rashee Rice, Scandling, but it's a whole crew of mid receivers, isn't it? It's like they've not gotten anybody that's really along the lines of being a kind of a game breaker out there. It's just kind of a bunch of like real solid dudes across the line. And
I didn't see anything solid tonight.
Yeah, I don't think they put their best foot forward. That's for sure. It was fun to watch. I was watching with Rashee Rice. You watched him early. And remember with Rashee Rice, his whole thing, I know you liked him, but the whole thing with him was the contested catch thing where he contested catches he can't catch. Yeah. Early on in the game, he has like a couple of contested catches, ball gets knocked out, and then he makes the touchdown score in the end zone, wide open, catches the ball. I had to laugh my butt off watching that.
Yeah.
Like, yep, that's Rashee Rice for you, man. That's that's what he gives you on that. So
for being one of the best GMs in the league, I cannot believe they gave up a 3rd round pick for an obvious bust in Kadarius Toney. I remember right before that trade, we were talking about him, and I said, I think he's going to go for a 6th round pick. I really did think that's what he was worth.
I did, and I agreed with you. I was in the same place. I thought that this is a guy that doesn't seem to love football, seems to love being a football player more than loving football. He seems to kind of, I'm sorry, that the amount of injuries that he had over there in his first couple of years with the Giants, it was like kind of the feeling of like, is he faking an injury here? And that's part of why they were going to move him. They're like, I don't think this guy really loves football. And so
he admitted he faked injuries with the Giants.
Yeah.
He admitted it after the fact.
So it was weird always to me that they were staking their claim on Kadarius being somehow like their number 1 receiver, the guy that they were going to be able to now really retain the value from this guy and his promise coming out of college. But boy, he had 3 tonight, brutal drops where he's not got contact on him. He's not being jostled. He's just got the ball right in his hands and it's just going right through him. And in the case of the causing a pick six, where he knocks it up back to the safety and Brian Branch takes it back for a pick six, where you're like, geez, not only don't catch it, you're going to give him a pick six back in the other turn. I'm sure Mahomes is pretty frustrated after that one, and I can't blame him. I'd be the same way.
I mean, he didn't play well either, by the way, honestly. I don't think Mahomes played well. Even with all the receivers dropping passes, he did not look like himself.
He's a little inaccurate tonight for my mode. Usually he made some throws tonight that usually he's a little closer on hitting the spots on, and he was just wildly off on a couple of throws in there, to your point on that. So I don't think he played a great game, but I mean, it was certainly more on the receivers on this one. If the receivers catch, they win this game. It comes down to that. And so I'm sure he's just begging Kelsey to get back as soon as possible, even if it's hyperextended. Come out here with just a leg cast, limp it out. I'll still throw it. You'll at least get another 7-8 catches. And we can make this offense work. But Chiefs are in an interesting situation this year. Everyone's taken for granted, Brendan, that they're going to be the number one overall seed, or that they're going to be that number one team out of the AFC in a tough AFC. But they've got some holes on that team that you could see tonight are real. The running back position is not very dynamic. Receivers are not very dynamic. There's no depth at the tight end position. The defensive line, in my opinion, is not that ferocious. It's pretty underwhelming. It's really on Mahomes to kind of carry that team through this season. And he's capable, but it's a lot.
No, I got it on record. You can go back and watch my video a few days ago. I have the Chargers winning that division.
I do too. I do too. Yeah. And I'm the same way. It just feels like they're in the better place and better position, and Herbert's on the rise and he's got a better team around him. It's just too much on Mahomes centric at this point, and leaning on like a 34-year-old Kelsey. I mean, you could see this coming too, where it's like, you're still going to lean on him as this number one tight end. It's like, guy's getting old. He's had a lot of games played. You could see an injury like this hyperextension coming with him because he has played so much. And this might be a year they have to kind of reset the deal, reset the deck. How does that saying go? Something about the deck, not swab the deck.
Moved the deck chairs around on the Titanic. That's the one.
No, there's another one. There's a rescrub the deck or something.
Yeah. Or they just pay Chris Jones and everything's okay again.
That's true too. I'm sure it didn't hurt Chris Jones's negotiating power tonight when Lions were running down the throat of the Chiefs tonight. It's probably like, yeah, I'm getting my money. Yeah. I'm getting paid. I'm getting paid. All right. Well, let's flip this over to the defensive side of the ball here for the Rams, Brendan, and take a look at what they're dealing with here on the other side. It's not great. So Rams 19th last year in yards, 22nd in yards per play, 16th in most turnovers, 22nd against the pass. They were 13th against the run, though you do now lose Bobby Wagner, who was probably a big helping part of that to a degree. So we look at this defense. We look at where their depth chart is on it. Aaron Donald returns back into the mix. He has been, no doubt about it, Brendan, a Seahawks killer on this team recently, right? Like, he's been a guy that has really given us some problems in recent years. We flip it over the side of the ball. What is your strategy for how to attack this defense that is still a defense not very well aligned up, right? It's still a defense very young. I mean, not a lot of notable names. You mentioned the other day, like, what is it, Kobe Turner or something is their second best defensive player, is what we determined the other day.
It might be. I think Kobe Durant might be.
Kobe Durant.
He's the guy who had 2 interceptions in the Broncos game last year. He picked sixed Ripien. Brett, is it? Okay, which one's the son that's not good? And Brett or Mark?
Brett.
Okay, yeah, because Mark is the one who won the Super Bowl with Washington, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I always get them mixed up, which is bad because one guy was actually good and the other guy really isn't. But yeah, this is the side of the ball where things are really destitute. You look at this side of the ball with these Rams and lost everything.
Yeah, it's gone. It's all gone. I mean, Brendan, let me read these names. Bobby Brown III, Ernest Jones, Christian Roseboom, Michael Holt, Darian Kendrick, Russ Yeast. Yes, that's a real name, Russ Yeast. And those are all starters. That wasn't just defensive players on the Rams. Those names I just read you are all starters on this Rams defense right now. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and you think back to those 2 games we played them last year. Think about their elite, their best players in those 2 games. It was Bobby Wagner and Jalen Ramsey. Bobby in the first game, Ramsey in the second game. Both those guys are gone.
Yeah.
Ashawn Robinson, that guy's gone. Greg Gaines, that guy is gone. Leonard Floyd, that guy is gone. Taylor Rapp, that guy's gone too. I don't know where he went, actually. I don't know where that guy went off to, but he was a pretty good player for them. He was a pretty good safety. He's gone too. Everything that they could lose, they lost. And they're down to guys who can't really go anywhere because they were on rookie contracts. And Aaron Donald is still hanging around. About the only acquisition this team made in this offseason of any note at all is Ahkello Witherspoon, our old friend, who did play decently for Pittsburgh last year. So maybe there's a little something there, but it in no way offsets what this team has lost. And this is the side of the ball where I think we're going to see the Rams be a maybe historically bad unit, because there's just nothing going on here. They got Aaron Donald. He's by far their best player. And I guess Laurel Murchison played pretty well at the end of the year last year. I remember he was actually killing the Broncos when they played Denver on Christmas. Michael Howitt actually had a good game against us in LA last year. He had 2 sacks on Geno. But it is as bad of a depth chart as you will find. I don't know if it's worse than the Cardinals' defensive depth chart. I kind of feel like it might be. Like the Cardinals, they've still got Budda Baker. They got Zaven Collins. They got a little bit of depth here. There's no depth here. It's Aaron Donald and the cliff falls off, or they fall off a cliff.
It really is. And right now you got Ahkello Witherspoon buried on the depth chart behind 6th round pick Darian Kendrick, which again, you want to talk about signs of going and tanking, right, Brendan? Subtle signs that's what they're leaning into. It's like, I'm not going to buy Darian Kendrick's probably better than Ahkello. Not that I like Ahkello or think he's all that good, but this is a guy you're going to probably be able to attack quite considerably on the outside if that's going to be the starter for them. Which it looks like it's going to be. It is a historically bad defense. This is why we're looking at this game and saying that, while the offense has a modicum with the offensive line, Stafford, Jefferson, Atwell, former 2nd round picks, Higbee, who's shown himself to be a functional tight end. You can see an offense there that can still give you a little bit of some slight troubles. I don't feel that way about this defensive side of the ball. It is empty. Last year did not perform up well. Yes, Donald was gone a lot part of the year, so that's a big part of it too. But now it's even worse than it was last year, essentially on paper. Yeah. It was better on paper last year when it performed one of the league worst marks than it is right now. And I just don't see there being major. I also see a team that Brendan's going to have to. In my opinion, in this game, they're going to have to bring up extra guys to the line of scrimmage to deal with the run, because you can't trust that front 7. And then you're going to get those open shots on the back end, and you're going to get the opportunities to really hit some big plays in this game, in my opinion. I know that with the way that Raheem Morris runs this defense anyway, in his style of Fangio defense is to run a little more aggressively as it is. I think this is just going to create more holes for you to be able to go attack. And it's not going to need to be as much of you just sort of slowly matriculating the ball up the field, but more of you having those moments in this game, 3 or 4 moments where you're hitting some real big shots, if not more than that, because you're just attacking those holes. There's going to be miscommunication. There's going to be rookies that are going to be blowing assignments. And when you're running those 8-man fronts down there, you need everybody to be perfectly assignment correct on the back end, right, Brendan? Because there's not the extra coverage on the back end to then handle if somebody gets loose and you got nobody in the zone who's supposed to be in the zone. That's where you get those broken plays and Tyler Lockett running free, looking around wide open, like, really? Okay.
Yeah, probably going to see some of that. I mean, we saw some of that the last couple times we played them last year, and they were not as. I think even with all the injuries, I think this Rams team is worse than last year's Rams team, because that team did get 17 really good games out of Bobby Wagner, to the point where some people have even suggested Bobby had his best season ever last year. I don't agree, but it's at least an argument. It's an argument you can make that has at least some legs to stand on. And the defense really was the thing that was keeping the Rams afloat last year. They had an okay defense for most of the year. It was the offense that was completely poverty. Yeah. So the fact that the defense lost all this stuff and didn't really restock with anything, like the only thing they really restocked on were rookies and I guess Ahkello Witherspoon. That should give you a clue of how bad this team really should be this year.
And not even necessarily highly drafted rookies as far as the defense, because you were down a 1st round pick. You went with Steve Avila in the 2nd round. So, and they've been down picks in recent years as it is as well. This is a little bit of feeling the force of having dumped those picks in recent years for the players to win now. this is what happens is you can end up with the roster of not very much left here to work through and go after. So this should be a defense that they are able to slay all game long. Should not be one you have to just wear down. Should not be after one that you have to deal with playing conservatively or worrying a lot. I would like to see, Brendan, a conscientious decision from our offense to double Aaron Donald. I think that's been something that's really stood out to me in playing Aaron Donald through the years, is that this team has been weirdly disassociative of wanting to run any double team blocks to Aaron Donald. That they'll run it every once in a while in a game, but for most part, right guard, left guard, you're going to have to handle your business there. And then now in doing that, you've allowed Aaron Donald to have most of his success more than any other team in the NFL against the Seahawks. So to me, there's a little bit of let this inform you a little bit. Don't let this one guy who's killed you so many times, who's the only guy on defense who can hurt you, who can harm you. Don't let that guy be the guy to go after you here. And I hope the coaching staff learns that lesson a little bit on this one, where there's nobody else that you're gonna have to fear on this defense, just this guy. Double him all day, wear him down, hit him with those 2 blocks over and over and over again. He's older as it is already. Just you're going to have out for a lot of plays. The offense is going to be successful. I would do it 24/7 just about in this game.
There's really nobody else you got to worry about. It's not like last year, 2 years ago, when you had to worry about Leonard Floyd and Von Miller.
Yeah, exactly. Or Ramsey, like you said with Ramsey too. Like you had to worry if I throw Ramsey, he might pick it over there, even with DK.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even in years before that, they had other decent guys in that front seven that could deliver some pass rush. They had Sean Robinson was a pretty good nose tackle. Greg Gaines has been a pretty good nose tackle. Yeah. These are guys of credibility in this league. They're not great players. They're not superstars, but they bring positive things to the table enough to where you can kind of understand why we don't really want to double team Aaron Donald all the time, because then we're going to get beat by these guys. But there's nobody on this team that should be able to beat you just because you single cover them other than Aaron Donald. So if we don't do it here, I guess it's just against our religion or something.
Yeah. I just think coming into this game with as lighted as it is on this Rams team, Brendan, well said, you can't let this guy be the guy to beat you in this game. If you lose this game to other places, other people, other guys, fine. I mean, I'm not happy about it. I don't think they should. We're much better than this team. They're in tank mode. There's no way they should be beating you at home game 1. You don't even have the factor in this one to me, Brendan, of them being a matchup you overlook here. That's been something that's been mentioned in my chat of, well, they know the Rams are so bad, so now they're just going to maybe be overlooking to like Detroit next week. And I go, no, not with the opening game of the week, opening game of the season. That one everybody's up for. That one everybody's going to be going full tilt for. So even that you can't fall back into. But just don't let this game wrecker, this guy that's been the best defensive player in football for the past 10 years, the guy that's done the most amount of his damage against your team in particular throughout the course of that time, don't let him do that to you here again. Try to fix that mistake. Try to get that error resolved as you can. And you can control it with a double team block, because Aaron Donald is nowhere near as effective if you do double team him. Like you say, though, what it is that he's usually a 3 tech, or I know it's a 3-eye guy, but when you have a nose tackle, that's the guy you have to tend to double team. So if you pull it to Donald, you tend to have to pull the double team away then from the nose tackle. But like you said, now they don't have Sean, they don't have Greg Gaines anymore. There's no longer the nose tackle there you got to be as worried about. So you can feel a little more confident to drive those double teams in Aaron's direction, in my opinion. And then I just hammer him right at the point of attack. I just go right downhill. When you bring Charbonnet, just go right at Donald's gap on a double team, and just try to wear him down. Yeah. He's all that can hit you on this defense.
Yeah, I remember last year I think it was week 6 when the Cowboys and Eagles played. The Eagles were doing some really creative stuff, throwing it at Micah Parsons to neutralize him, just hitting him with multiple guys on each play, hitting him with different guys who he wasn't expecting to be involved in blocking him. And he didn't do anything in that game. He was completely out of that. And they just game planned a way to neutralize their best player. And I stuff like that can be done. It's like back in the day, going all the way back to Joe Gibbs, finding a way to make Lawrence Taylor not so unstoppable with his what was it? His H-back sets, I think it was.
A lot H-back and a lot of counter runs. So, catching, you got a guy like LT that's want to be super aggressive. And so counters are, the run play looks like it's going here, but then it goes over there, and it's slow rolled to its setup. So he would run those counters, and it would be where you'd catch LT going to where he thought the first play was going, but it's actually going over here. And then they had a good running game also, right? They had the hogs, and they had the good backs, so they could get that done on that other side of it. But that made it more tougher than on those teams that want to be aggressive at that point.
Right. So you got to come up with something like that. You got to find some way to make sure this is not the guy that beats you. Like if we get beat because Bobby Brown the third is actually Vince Wilfork 2.0, then
So be it.
I can kind of live with that. I guess that's like losing the lottery. That's
Yeah.
like the opposite of winning the lottery or whatever. However you want to put it. That's just weird stuff that happens. But don't let it go down that way. Don't let it go down the Aaron Donald way.
Yeah, I mean, you don't feel good about it if somebody else beats you, but don't make it the guy that's done this kind of damage to it. It's the same thing I'd like with your baseball. Brendan, you got a guy that's a hitter like Trout coming up, and there's nobody on base, and this guy's killed you in the Angels against the Mariners throughout his career. Walk that guy. Just walk him. Just let's not let that guy be the guy to take us down here, right?
They don't even make you throw the 4 pitches anymore. You just point.
No, just point. Just be like, yeah, you know what time it is, Mike. Come on, you're not doing this to us today. Not again. With many years of this, no more.
Oh, yeah. So real quick, I just want to point out here that on the ESPN depth chart for the Rams, they don't have a kicker listed. I'm looking at it right now. They got a punter. They got returners. There is no kicker. So do the Rams just not have a kicker and they're going to go for 2 every time they get a touchdown? Like, what's going on here?
Well, if we're looking for signs they're tanking at this point, if they run out and they do that, then we absolutely know that it's tank time. Like, this is, come on, you're not gonna have a kicker. Like it's, and people have been pushing back about it on this with both the Cardinals and the Rams on me saying as much as this is a tank, and you don't see tanks in football very much. You really don't. You see at times teams kind of softly lean into it. You'll have times there's been notable teams like the Browns with their own blah blah season with the owner or the Miami's owner trying to pay Flores to lose games. There are those slight little moments that come out, but for the most part, year in, year out, there's years we go through, Brendan. I think it's fair to say that there's whole seasons that gone through in recent history where there's not been one team that's tanked. Teams have ended up bad, but they ended up bad trying to compete and trying to be good at the start of the season with their roster building. They just fell short.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, players don't tank, right? Like, Byron Young doesn't care if the Rams get Caleb Williams, right?
Yeah.
A guy like Ronnie Rivers or Kyron Williams or these guys don't care if they get Caleb Williams in the draft because they're going to be gone.
Mm-hmm.
That has no effect on them. So it's not about the players saying, "Oh, we want to tank." It's about the organization tanking. There are things that you do to enable a tank. You don't spend any money in free agency. The Rams did that. You let all your outgoing free agents just go. The Rams did that. They kept nobody who could have gone. Organizations can tank. I think that happens fairly frequently. It's just the players are not going to be cooperating with it. You just kind of mastermind your own way to doing it without the players openly just rolling over on the field because they're not going to do that.
Yeah. You set the stage. You set the stage for their failures to come up, and they'll play hard. In fact, you're trying to get them to play hard because you wanted to build off the eventual foundation moving into the years further when you do turn this thing over. But the Rams have, as hard as any team in recent memory that I've seen, the Cardinals are doing this as well, have leaned into this tank. There's a soft leaning into it. There's some subtle things you can do, but then there's the hard leaning into it, like not having a kicker announced 2 days before the game. There's like little things like that can come up on this.
Yeah, do you remember when Sue kicked for the Lions in that one game because their kicker got hurt?
I don't.
Yeah, there was one game where he kicked an extra point. I think he made it. He might have missed it, but their kicker was hurt, so they literally just went around and was like, "Okay, who's got the best chance of kicking?" And Sue was like, "I'll do it." But maybe the Rams are going to do something like that.
It's weird they don't when those situations happen. They can't as often go to the punter. Seems like the punters aren't as natural in just being able to do that.
Yeah, you would. I mean, I guess you kind of figure at that point out we're going to miss it. Let's at least make Sports Center.
Yeah, exactly. Let me creative with the 300-pound man running up to the ball. Somebody mentioned in the chat they do have Brett Maher on the practice squad, so they'll probably elevate him before the game. And
yeah, I guess. Ooh, boy, he could hit like a 70-yard field goal to beat us, or he could miss like 3 33-yard field goals so we win. It could go one way or the other.
You never can tell with a Brett Maher. He's a little bit of a wild one at the kicking position on what you're getting. Seahawks Gaming, thank you for the $2 donation. I do appreciate Seahawks Gaming. He says the Chiefs are tanking for Caleb Williams. and he's already fell out of love with Mahomes. He said, I got to get my next one. You're too old for me.
Well, I'll tell you. Did you hear what Caleb's camp said the other day?
I did. Yeah.
Like that sounds almost like a direct shot at a team like Arizona. I'm
Oh,
sure
yeah.
he'd love to go to LA. I'm sure he'd
Yeah.
love to be like, stay in this city, stay in this state, play in that, giant Sodom and Gomorrah style arena stadium, like just this. I'm sure he'd love that. He'd love to play for the Rams. But if it's the Cardinals, there's precedence for this, by the way. In 2011, Andrew Luck could have come out and declared, but
Mhm.
he didn't. And it's widely believed he didn't because he didn't want to play for the Panthers.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we also got the Eli Manning situation too.
Yeah, that's like where the guy came out and was like, "Oh, screw you! I'm going to do what I want anyway." But yeah, that's possible too. Man,
That's
could you
where
imagine if the Cardinals drafted him and traded him? That would be insane.
Well, that's what I see happening here is what they're doing and what the father's doing here. And I'm sure what their camp's doing here is I don't buy Caleb coming back for another year of college. I believe that the NIL opens the door for this to happen, Brendan. To your point, it does. Like you do now have a potential where a guy like Caleb, especially in that LA market, Brendan, and maybe he can make 5 million a year, 10 million a year, coming back for a final season. Certainly is possible. And that puts that along in line with what he'd probably make on a yearly basis, even as the number one overall pick. It's probably pretty damn, pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
I think what he does, though, is he does the Eli Manning route here, where it's not, I'm going back to school, but it's, I will go back to school if you pick me, or you can trade me and get some assets back now for me for doing this trade. And the Cardinals come to it and they got to go, okay, what do we want to do? Take the hard line stance and lose nothing for him and then have to take, Drake May at that point and blah, blah, blah. Or, acquiesce to his request at that point, like the Manning family got the Chargers to do as well. And I think unless you're just kind of, and look, I'm not going to understand how dumb the Cardinals organization is. I mean, I don't know if you've been watching the Gannon stuff, but it's like, I mean, they hired that guy, so anything's possible here. But I do come back and say that he probably forces them to move him, and then the Cardinals just move him because the Cardinals will be able to get a haul. I mean, that's the thing about this is if they do want him, if they do it, they will. And there's also been some other history. This happened with Elway as well, with the Colts back in the day. Didn't want to go to the Colts, threatened to go to the New York Yankees to become a third baseman for them, forced eventually for a trade to happen, one in which our Seahawks could have almost gotten Elway. We didn't want to come up with that one extra first round pick. We're like, no, that's too much. But they'd get a haul. Somebody would give them a haul like nobody's ever gotten before. And I think that's just too, as the Godfather would say, that's too good of an offer for me to refuse.
Yeah, I think I can kind of see the future here. I think I kind of know what's going to happen. I'm feeling it. Arizona gets the number one pick. Caleb doesn't want to go there. They pick him, trade him to a team that just got new ownership, a team that needs to make a big splash.
Ooh.
Big market. The Washington, whatever their names are.
There you go.
I don't know. I'm feeling that one.
The TBDs.
Yeah.
I call them the Washington TBDs.
Yeah. I don't know. That just feels right to me, right? They got to do something about that quarterback spot. It would be a great way to like splash onto the scene and be like, all right, we're the new owners in charge here. Things are not going to be the way they were under Schneider. We're solidifying this position up for the next several years, for the next decade plus.
I think it's a smart option on your part because let's think about it. Washington with that defensive line, defense in general is probably going to be just good enough to get themselves into like 5, 6, 7 wins, which doesn't put them in contention for either Williams or Drake May. And then the Cardinals can feel like we trade back to 7. We're going to pick up your 7th. We get our top 10 pick or 6th, wherever they're at. And then you give us what? They'd probably give them 2 other future first round picks maybe to the Cardinals at that point in addition to that. I mean,
yeah, something like that because it's Caleb. Because the Eli was an extra first, a third, and a fifth. And Eli was not like some super high level prospect. He was very like
not to Williams level. Not to Williams level. He was considered a really good quarterback prospect, but not to Caleb.
Yeah, so it was first, third, fifth. So for Caleb, it's probably first, and that's about right.
Yeah. I would think so for a guy of this good. And I think that's close to what the Elway was on the return eventually for that too. It was something, there were some players involved in the Elway one though. We made it hard, but I think they move him if it does come down, if he forces their hand. And I don't blame a player coming out of college for wanting to do that. You're a generational talent and you've got to go to this piss poor team, this bad organization that's voted like one of the worst in football with how it manages its players and takes care of them and charges them for food. And you've got to go in there and be a Superman. Like I don't, it's already hard enough to go play NFL. You're going to put that all on top of me too. In addition to that, like the hell with you. Why don't you get some of yourself right first before you start coming looking for the saviors?
Yeah. I remember back in the day, Anquan Bolden had the Arizona facility like mail out a package for him. And on his next paycheck, they deducted like $14 because of the shipping charge. And he's like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, it's ridiculous that franchises do that. It makes me so much appreciate our organization here, Brendan, because we're on the other end of the scale there, where we get it. You make these guys comfortable, make them feel like all they have to do is concentrate on football. Don't get them, that's what that is. It's like you get mail back. That's that much more time. You're in the stadium here, working on tape, working on training, doing something else. So yeah, the Arizona Cardinals got a bad rep right now in this sport. It's not getting any better anytime soon. And boy, would it be a black market on them that they lose out on one of the few generational quarterbacks that have come down the line in the last 50 years. And they are not able to get him because of how bad they run this organization, because of that said reputation. And
yeah. And it'd be great for us, right? Because they obviously wouldn't trade him to the Rams. They wouldn't trade him within the division. So we dodge the Caleb Williams bullet.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't absolutely do not see them going and giving him to the Rams at that point. That would not happen. I think your Washington team's a good one. There's a couple of them out there that I think could be those teams willing to jump. I mean, they'd have a line of teams. That's probably why I think they get the 3 first-round picks too. Is there'd be a good 5-6 teams willing to pay that price, and they'd have their suitors to kind of go through. So yeah, it's pretty funny Seahawks gaming, but I like to see Caleb doing that. I'd like to not see Caleb in the NFC West, Brendan. That would make me happy. I think that guy's the real deal. Did you see that one throw he made down the sideline the first week where he's running the sideline and he's about to run out of bounds, and then he throws it running and puts it right up, looped up over the top to the receiver on the play? Just insane.
Do you think he's a better prospect than you think he's a better prospect than Mahomes, right? Like that's the comparison everyone makes, but he's better than Mahomes as a prospect, isn't he?
Yeah, he's better as a prospect. I mean, Mahomes had questions about him coming out, and it's a different view of where a guy's viewed coming out versus what he becomes. Guys can be viewed a certain way and then become best of all time. I mean, Brady is, Brady wasn't a highly looked at prospect, but obviously, became what he was. So yeah, no, he's better. He's more refined. He's got less parts of his game that don't need to be cleaned up. He's more accurate than Mahomes, and I don't know that the arm strength is considerably behind Mahomes. It's probably pretty close step for step. Mahomes got a little more size. Both of them. Caleb probably a little more mobile than Patrick showed tonight. He's mobile. He can move.
Mahomes is really, really slow. He just finds a way to make it work. He just
finds a way.
That doesn't really make any sense and annoys you. He has the exact same 40 time as Peyton Manning did.
Jeez, really?
They both ran the exact same 40 time.
He makes it work though. He was their top rusher today, and it's like whenever he wanted to go and scramble for 7 or 8 yards, he could go get it. It was kind of wild to watch, and it always seems that way when you're watching Mahomes. He always finds a way to break free, and it's also because he's not going to get a quarterback spy, and he's going to get brushed by 4 guys a lot of the time. So it does lead to those open doors where suddenly a rusher runs past him, and he's just got a quick 7, 8 yards he can go get. Mm-hmm. Paul, thank you for the $2 donation here. I think that this certainly does give an indication of the Chiefs and what they're going to have to try to accomplish here when Kelsey does move on, which those days are not going to be long. I think those days are not long off. Not a lot of tight ends play into their late 30s in this league or play really great football into their late 30s. I think they've tried to take some sort of, secondary swings at this. They've kind of taken to be the Packers route. Like the Packers did this with Rodgers and Favre as well, Brendan, which is, we're going to go a lot of these 2nd, 3rd round receivers. A lot of these guys that are still really, we're taking kind of relatively high, but not all the way into that 1st round high or going in. As you can see, as the Packers saw with this, you can get some returns, but then you can also get to a place where you're like looking at your receiver going, it's okay, but it's not really dynamic. It's not, kind of like our Seahawks receiving core right now.
Well, they broke that a little bit with Javon Walker, and that one worked out until he tore everything in his knee. That almost would have that was almost the thing that could have saved Favre's end of career in Green Bay, I think.
Very much could have, because the receiving core definitely had dipped by that point where Sterling Sharp was gone, Brooks was gone by that point, Freeman was gone by that point. You were just kind of trying to cycle guys in a little bit and find guys that could just kind of get by. It's a little bit of get by at the position. And Mahomes, and he's at his best, had Kelsey, maybe the best game-breaking tight end in the game at that time, and then Tyreek Hill on the outside, one of the best game-breaking receivers on the outside. And
at this point, I think Kelsey's making an argument for being the best, one of the at least top 5 tight end ever.
I think you've got to probably make the argument pretty closely here that he's getting to the point of ascending into that number one mark with his production. I mean, he's got like 12,000 yards or something in his career.
Yeah, so you've got Gronk, you've got Kelsey, you've got Sharp. I mean, I don't know how you would evaluate somebody like a Mike Ditka, but he's generally considered to be up there, but that's basically a different sport they were playing. He's probably a top 5 tight end all time at this point, and he's probably closer to number 1 than people think because he's still playing. I think some people have a little bit of an issue saying that a player that is currently playing is one of the best ever or the best ever. But when you really look at their career achievements and accomplishments and numbers, it just kind of has to be.
Yeah, I mean, for my money, Rob Gronkowski is basically your gold letter standard for the tight end position as far as all time goes. One of the best run blocking guys that was at the position ever, and then phenomenal pass catcher. I'm looking at his stats right now, Brendan. 9,000 yards, 92 touchdowns, incredible production. And then you look at Kelsey, you got 10,000 yards, 69 touchdowns. So
yeah, I mean, the issue with Gronk is he got hurt a lot. He missed a lot of games. That's really the only thing.
Yeah, it is. It is. He does get the 11-year career in there, so he does give you the 10 years of dominance you're looking for from the position. But I think Kelsey's got a good, strong argument to be the number one guy right now. I really do think he does. He's won multiple championships over as well here with Mahomes. But they're going to have some tough ground to cover because if that day comes down sooner than later, and Mahomes with that contract that's ever going up, unless he starts taking some discounts, with their commitment to want to build the offensive line and spend so much money in the offensive line as they have, you got to rob from somewhere to pay your quarterback. That's kind of the deal with that. And that makes it tough. Especially end up paying Chris Jones for the next couple of years at $30 million a year. Doesn't get any easier at that point.
Yeah, still interested to see how that ends because now Bosa's gotten paid. Does that mean he wants more now? Some people were talking about maybe his asking price will be influenced by what Bosa got. But if that's the case, that makes it less likely a deal happens. So
I don't think the edge guys impact the DL guys to me. Every position in football by its pay scale seems to be impacted by what's directly at that positional group, not what's happening outside of that positional group. It's just that Bosa got the high water mark here because of the fact that he's coming off a Defensive Player of the Year award and he's a younger guy. He's going into his prime. With Jones, you do also factor in different position, and he's also 29. So it's going to be hard for him to come out there and say, I want 33, 34 at that point. No one's paying that. No one in the league's paying that mark for Jones. There are other teams I think that would have paid $34 million a year for Bosa. That being a bit of the difference. So I think it's looked at a little differently there, but it's still going to cost you at least 28, 29 minimum. And if not, if he's not holding his ground firm on the 30 million request, Jones. And if they do that,
he would take 28. His camp is saying 28 would be fine.
I think what I've heard right now between it is that the Chiefs have offered a 2-year extension of guaranteed money, but he wants probably a 4-year deal. That's probably the problem here is that they're saying, well, we'll do this for 2 years, but he wants the 4-year, but they're looking at it going, well, how are we going to get that receiver? How are we going to help out this receiving corps if we're paying the line, paying Mahomes, Kelsey's still here, and we got this gigantic salary going to Chris Jones in addition to it. That's going to be hard for management of the team at that point. And I can see the conundrum that we're in. This is why this has lasted and caused the holdout to continue to linger on here, Brendan. It's not an easy answer for the Chiefs just to pay him. Like it was kind of with the Niners where they're in cap hell, but they had no choice on that situation. They had to pay Bosa. There was no trading Bosa at that point where it made any kind of sense.
Right.
There was just no deal out there to be had.
I agree.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that donation so much, man. Snail, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, what if New England traded for Caleb Williams?
Their pick is going to be probably somewhere in the middle, I think. I think they're going to be decent this year. So you're going to have to give up a lot more. You're going to have to give up like maybe 3 first-round picks on top of the pick swap. And that doesn't seem like the Bill Belichick way, does it?
What pass do we have? As I always say with these type of things, if we're going to predict a guy to do something or a coach or a front office, show me the track record of it happening before. Let's not predict things to happen that have never come down. And the New England Patriots have never packaged multiple first-round picks up to go get anybody that I can remember. They've given a first-round pick up for a player, but I cannot remember in Belichick's time there them giving up multiple first-round picks for a particular guy. And so this would be the first time if they did. Now, Belichick's going to get Brendan, he's going to get pretty desperate here, though, with his situation and how that's working out because he's got to be on some kind of hot seat if this is another middle-of-the-road kind of season for them.
Yeah, and it probably will be, but I don't think that would be his solution. That's it's just too much, especially when you don't even like Caleb Williams. I know he's this great prospect and everything, but if you put him on that New England team, I don't think that suddenly makes them a Super Bowl contender, especially not as a rookie. So that at least one of those picks you're giving up is going to be pretty juicy. Probably it's not going to be some super late pick. Probably more than one of them is probably going to be a pretty decent pick. So I don't know. It just doesn't seem like something that would happen.
The problem here, Snail, is the mid-road state of things, because there will be a team in the top 10 of the first round who's bad, who needs a quarterback, who will give up exactly the same draft capital of New England, but who is still giving then Arizona that first pick that they get at the first pick they get, the most cheeriest one that they can count on. They know is a top 10 pick. So if you're talking about the New England coming in for Caleb now, and they're going to beat some team that's at 6 or 7 or 8 to get Caleb, they're now not only going to have to throw 3 first-round picks, they're going to have to throw second-round picks in there, third-round picks in there. They're going to be giving up huge swaths of drafts to try to make up that ground. Coming back around, I just don't think that that's a Bill Belichick way of doing things. He'd love to get that kid, but I think more Bill Belichick is looking like Schneider would look at this draft class, saying, look at the second, third, fourth rounders all the way through here in this draft class of quarterbacks. I could pick in any round I kind of want at that point. I think he tries to find more of the creative solution there with it than leaning to find the Caleb.
Yeah, next year's QB class is going to be really good, by the way. Mm-hmm. You can find an interesting prospect much later than Caleb. You can pick in the middle of the first round and get Joe Milton. You can get Michael Penix. You can go deeper than the first round and probably get Cam Ward. You can get so many guys.
Yeah.
There might be more than 20 quarterbacks drafted this year. And not because they have to be drafted, but because they're so good, they're worthy of being drafted.
Exactly. And it is a guy in Belichick that does still have McCorkle Jones there too. I mean, we can talk about it as well. It's like McCorkle, he had about a year last year, admittedly, and I'm not a big Mac Jones guy at all, but we also had the defensive coordinator is their offensive coordinator last year. Remember when they tried to do that? Matt Patricia was going to be your offensive coordinator last season, and we could see that one coming. This was going to be an ultimate failure. That's not, to me, emblematic of the quarterback being bad. That's that you have Belichick having a complete brain fart moment where it's like, now I'm going to just make my defensive coordinator offensive coordinator. We'll just all be offensive coordinators. We'll just all run it. We'll just all do it. So that's how we'll do it. Didn't work. Now they got back in with Bill O'Brien back in the house, and I think there's a good chance that he can maybe at least get McCorkle to a functional state.
Yeah. I mean, Mac Jones is pretty decent that first year. It was okay and nothing crazy, but he got to the playoffs.
Yeah, your point about there not having a lot still stands. They do have a pretty good defense, kind of underrated defense, and they will be committed to running the ball. So they'll keep themselves fairly close in certain games because of that, regardless of the quarterback position a bit. But yeah, we come back to where it's middle of the road. They're somewhere in probably the low teens in drafting and where they're picking, and that's just not going to put them in play for either making the trade or getting Williams just trying to straight up pick him and grab him.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you, Snail. Appreciate you for that. Jason Tudor says, the NFL wants Caleb Williams in LA.
Well, I mean, there's only so much they can do to influence it, right? Like if Arizona ends up with that first pick, it's not happening. So does that mean the NFL would rig games against the Rams to make sure they lose every game so they have to get it?
I haven't checked my NFL script lately, Brendan. I'm still on page 10. I'm still on the first couple of weeks of the season, so I haven't gotten to that part yet. Yeah, I mean, might we see some officiated games where they don't get the benefit of the calls that they got? Like, let's say, Brendan, when they were in their Super Bowl run, and we were seeing some pretty dodgy calls even against our Hawks. You remember the DJ Dallas game at the end where there's the PI that goes uncalled, the blatant one. We had a couple of those moments where it was kind of like, still suspect here.
Not good.
Not good. Some smells here, NFL, and I think you're trying to make LA a thing. Look, LA, they would love to have that as a perfect. If you had the NFL, no doubt about it. You talked about what would be best for advertising, what would be best for revenue, what would be best for the NFL as far as raising the star of it. Getting him out into LA with McVay would be a match made in heaven. But it's going to be hard to manipulate that. It's going to be hard because there's so many. There is teams like, there's the Cardinals there. There's the Raiders there. Raiders are sending mental health people to the homes of their players right now. You want to talk about bad omens for an upcoming season. Maybe your second best defensive player, I guess I should say. There's a couple teams out there that might be in this competition for being the worst team, even as hard as the Rams have leaned into this tank. This has got a year in particular, Brendan, where I know parity is the thing, but I can look at 4 or 5 teams where I go, I don't know that I see necessarily an easy let's say 4 wins on their schedule.
Mhm. Now they play Arizona twice, right?
That's
So that
true.
could end up being 2. But other than that, I mean, do they play the Colts? I feel like they play the Colts this year because if we're playing the Titans, I think they're playing the Colts. So maybe that one,
Let me take a look.
and then you're pretty dry.
Let's see. You got the Cardinals. You're right. You're at the Colts,
Yeah. Okay.
and that would be, yeah. They got a pretty, for being a team that wasn't good last year. Their schedule's pretty tough. Bengals, Eagles, Packers,
Mhm.
Browns, Ravens, Commanders, Saints, Giants. Of course, the Niners
Yeah.
twice, Hawks
I
twice.
think their first 5 games are against elite teams, which is another reason why hold out Cooper Kupp, because you're not going to win anyway. So that may have, if they put him on IR like they're talking about, that's probably part of the reason.
I mean, if I'm them, I would be putting him on IR all day. What's the point of having him tried out there? You're not winning anything this year. You've had a couple of years where you've probably overused him a little bit when you factor in how much you were targeting him on top of the playoff runs that he had. He could stand to probably have a good year and a half where he gets his body back to being freshened up. And if you happen to, clear all this money off the books after this year and you can go get your quarterback next year, who's to say you can't turn this around, a little bit faster at that point? I think that's very much possible. As bad as they look right now, Brendan, the turnaround to me is much more quickened if you as a team embrace that turnaround and say, let's go all in. Let's take it down this year. Let's, eat all the dead money this year. Let's offload the assets and return what we can get, whatever we can get for those guys. And I think that they did that this offseason. So that will help them, I think, in getting this motored back around the back in the right direction for them.
It's better than what some of these teams do.
Yeah, some of these teams, it's that in between phase, Brendan, I always talk about, where you think you're a contender, but you're not, it's like the Saints right now, Saints aren't winning anything, but they talk themselves every offseason into like, let's go 70 million more over the cap next year and how we'll plan it out, because this will be our year. This will be the one we make it through here. It's like, no, just know where you are and where you're at and what you're doing and how far away you are. Don't talk yourself into it, it seems like they have. Thank you though, Jason, for that $2 donation. I appreciate you. Team Money Israel, thank you for becoming a YouTube member of the channel. We just did a member-only show here just before me and BNB went live here. So we do those weekly on Thursday on my channel over there, Team Money. But keep an eye on your community post as we'll be doing more of those kind of member streams and whatnot throughout the course of this year. But thank you for becoming a member of the channel. I do appreciate it.
Welcome aboard. Team Money is real.
Team Money's real, baby. Let's go. Having a good night out there. And folks, please do hit that like button if you could. Get over there to Seahawks Brendon Nelson's channel if you could as well. Get subbed up there, all that good stuff. Upo with a $5 donation. Thank you, Upo. I really do appreciate it. He says, no comment, just appreciate the discussion. Hope you guys keep doing these. Okay, I guess that was a comment.
It is.
It is indeed.
But that's a good comment, though.
That's a great comment, man. No, me and Brendan love doing this. I'm not speaking for you too much on this one, Brendan, but we definitely love doing this, man.
No, I can't stand this, man. This is like torture.
Every day it's kicking and screaming. I'm on the phone with him. I'm like, come on, man. The people want this. You got to give it to him. And he's like, no. He's like the rock star behind the curtain. Like, I want some green Skittles and then I'll go out. It's kind of one of those things. But no, we love doing this, Upo, and it's something that absolutely twice a week we'll be doing this in the future. And if we do have an emergency stream, if our Hawks do make a trade, I'm sure we'll be doing an emergency stream to discuss it as well. So you can count on, man, continuing on in the future. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. But thank you for the donation, man. Very kind of you. Very, very kind. So let's get down to well, I think offensively, I wanted to ask you on this. We did talk about the defensive parts we're dealing with, but we've talked about how we attack with maybe trying to get a little more of the double teams to Aaron Donald. What's your manner of offensive approach here? Do you say, Geno threw 57% of the time last year with this offense, especially last year started out really was throwing the ball a lot? Or do you try to lean more into a balanced approach here against this Rams defense? I mean, you can kind of attack them wherever you want, I guess. So it's like pick your poison, surf or ski. It's either one should work.
Well, I'm all about taking what the defense allows you to have, but based off this preseason, our running game might not be there yet, right? Like it didn't look that good. We had a couple good runs, we had good moments, but overall the running game just didn't look great. And I know a lot of it was with backups and third stringers, but I think that even before this season, even before the preseason, we both looked at it and went, that Evan Brown, Phil Haynes area of the offensive line is a weakness. And if you're trying to run the ball up the A gap and the B gap, that's not really what you're not going to be thrilled with the results there.
Yeah.
So I'm still kind of thinking like this is a pass first team now. Pass first with Cross and Lucas as your tackles, both superior pass blockers to run blockers, with the receivers that you have, especially because it looks like JSN is going to play. I would be very surprised at this point if he didn't play.
Yeah.
This is a passing team. This team is meant to pass the ball. So I think that is your identity right now, especially if Walker is in any way inhibited. So yeah, I would go with that.
I love it. I'm the same way. I do keep, like you do, coming back to the offensive line being, as it stands right now, 4/5 of it is basically pass block based. That's where the strength of it is, at least going off of where it was last season and where I think I would expect it to trend to. I would like to see them come out here, Brendon, with giving Geno a lot of control at the line of scrimmage, like you just talked about. We're going to hit them where they're weak. So if they want to come up with 7-man boxes, or they're going to come in overload to one side, give Geno that control you gave last year at the line of scrimmage to be able to change into the way to then attack that defense. I like that. I like getting him some early short passes in the first game of the season out on the edges, Brendon. Work the tight ends a little bit. Work in JSN early on. If you're going to have him active, then use him, in my opinion. He doesn't have to go the full gamut of this game. If you get up in points in this game, I'd sit him at that point and go, okay, you did enough for us here. But work some of that short stuff right out the gate with them. Get them leaning enough to try to protect against that pass, and then come back around the run. It's a little bit like, to me, this game, or with this offense, the way I look at it is like the old Holmgren days when you were running a West Coast offense at that time too as well, which is that the West Coast offense in a lot of its openings is you pass to set up the run, whereas the old approach in football was you run to set up the pass. And this goes the opposite kind of way with it in its methodology and approach, especially when your line's kind of built this way to do that naturally anyway. You get them coming upfield, that's when you counter back down on them. So I would love to see Geno be given the ultimate control in this game, Brendon. Don't try to have him do too many home run throws right out the gate. It's the first game of the year. Get him in rhythm. Get him kind of cooking, going a little bit where he's feeling good about a couple of nice, short, easy passes, and then let her rip. Then test this defense out. Probe,
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if this Seahawks game ends up looking a little bit like the Huskies game last week, where a little bit of a slow start, a little bit funky, a little bit in a rut because it's the first game of the year. Could be a little bit of stuff like that. And then you hit the second quarter and it's just bombs away.
Yeah.
I think it could end up being something like that as well. So I'm prepared for that possibility. But I definitely want to let Geno be in control of this game. We've set it all up for him.
Yeah, we really have. And it was the strength of his game last year was that control at the line of scrimmage and reading it right. He's already shown it at times in this preseason, Brendon. There's the Jake Bobo play against the Packers in the final preseason game where he's recognizing the blitzers coming right up, right? They're not up in the A gap, but they're coming up from 7 yards of depth up to 4 yards of depth. He catches it, changes out of the play to what Bobo needs to do on the outside, make sure he's got his protections in place to handle the blitzers so that the long developing route, the sluggo route, can then develop and get free over the top, because you can change the play. And if you don't handle your protections, the free rushers are going to get there before the sluggo can get to depth, because it's going to take some time to roll. So he still has shown off that ability even in the preseason. Let him lean into that. Trust him in that aspect of it. He's been working his butt off to put himself in this position. And I think you're going to come back to finding success with it if you let him kind of carry the day on that. Let him have a little bit of that freedom. Don't play this game from a point of being scared. Don't play this game of like trying to not make mistakes, or let's just try to shorten the game down as fast as possible. Step on this team quick, step on them early, put your foot on their throat, and they're going to lay over to me. This is not going to be a team this year that's going to be bouncing back with a lot of resiliency to it, that they know what they are, they know where they're going, they know what the season's about due to be had. And so make them feel it. And I think if you do, you get that team to wilt quick.
Yeah. There are teams that are going to have resilience, but you wouldn't expect a team like this to be. The one thing I would say is it is still week 1. It's not like they're 2-10 going into this game and they're just looking for an excuse to stop trying hard. But I think they deep down know what's up. Deep down, they must understand. Like, I know it's preseason, but they got blown out by that Broncos team in the last game of the preseason. It was Broncos backups. It was 41-0.
Yeah.
Like, you can't tell me that means something. That tells me that your depth is really, really bad at the very minimum.
Yeah. And I agree. You're going to get a good hard effort, but I think if you got a guy like, let's say, Aaron Donald, who, if it's a 3-point game late into the third quarter, he's probably giving you still everything he's got. If it's a 15-point lead in the third quarter, does that guy start to kind of okay, it is going to be one of those years. I still want to play a couple years. I want to be still upright for a trade deadline deal, which I think the Rams very well could end up doing something like that with Donald when it comes down. I'm almost kind of expecting them, frankly, to do something like that. And if that's the case, then maybe that lightens up in that point, just a bit. But I do think you can kind of get on these teams a little bit and get them in that slab. Like, well, we're going to Seattle first game of the year. We knew this was going to be a tough one anyway. Let's just pack it in and get through this season. I feel like that's would be my thought if I was the Rams. Like, let me just get through this season. Let me just get through this pain and suffering as fast as possible.
Collect my paycheck.
Yeah, exactly. Is it
to collect?
2024 yet? Are we there? Are we to the draft? Primo, thank you for the $5 donation. He says, no questions, no comments, just for the love of the game. Thank you, Primo. Beautifully put, man. And for the love of the game, indeed. For the love of the game, indeed, man. Thank you. Very, very kind of you for doing so on that. Very much so. So we stomp on them defensively. We stomp on them offensively. You and I don't have to worry about what we're going to do to them special teams. I mean, they're just bringing that kicker up from the practice. We got to beat special teams wise too. So we've got them kind of in all three phases of the
money
football.
We spend on our special teams. We better.
Those guys better bring it. Better be a strength of this team. So let's get down to kind of a bottom line on this one. Is I don't think that this is a game that we're going to have some games like next week, Brendon, that I think are going to take a little bit of time to really kind of, especially this Lions team and what they bring and what they offer and the difficulties that they provide. This game's not going to quite be as much as that as some of the other games we look at this year. We're going to win special teams. We know that. We feel like we're going to be able to take care of them defensively. We think their offense, we don't know what their offense can be. It's got some stuff to work with still over there. Give me your score breakdown on this game of how you see it going. Where are we going? I know you got the Hawks winning, but by how much?
I'm gonna go 31-13.
Oh,
it's a little wide, maybe a little too wide for a week one game. Week one is weird. Week one can be weird, but I just feel like there's no way they keep it close. At the end of the day, there's no way they can hold on to even any semblance of a close score because they just don't have the horses. So maybe it's somewhat kind of sort of semi-close for most of the game. And then at the end, maybe they have like a fumble that we return for a touchdown or something like that. The things that bad teams do to turn every game into what looks like a blowout.
Yeah. And in inexperienced teams, when you start this many rookies or young players across the board, there's that many more mistakes now, unforced errors that are now made, where it isn't about you just beating the guy wholesale. It's about the guy making kind of a mistake on that. I'm going to go 34-17. You get up by a lot of points on them. They're pushing to try to kind of pass and score throughout this game to get themselves back into it. But you get up on top of them early. I think you're right. A little bit of a rough start, but you're quickly through that by like even late into the first quarter, you're sort of hitting your gears at that point offensively. And I think you just keep kind of cooking out some consistent drives over the course of this game. And, it's like when we look at it like 4 or 5 straight drives, they're coming away with points on every time. Maybe not a touchdown every time, but they're coming away with points. They're controlling the clock, time of possession, moving the chains. I see that being this kind of game in that way. And so I like you. I know it is shooting a little bit high to give them that much of a win in the opening week. But we are way better than this team. We're way more talented than this team. We have way more on the line than this team, way more to play for. You're at home in the first week of the season. There's so much on this that should allow this game to be kind of us, barnstorming them just a little bit in this particular contest, in my opinion.
Yeah. And if it doesn't happen and we lose, I promise you, I will not be coming on here after that game saying the old cliches of, well, it's a division rival and they had Aaron Donald and none of that stuff should matter. None of that stuff should apply at all to a game like this.
Yeah, this is why we're pushing as hard as you and I to say, here's why we see it as a 2-touchdown game. We say this should be a team that you roll up on. And that's not, if you've watched me and Brendon do these previews before, that's not really a common sentiment that we lean into saying. There's a lot of times we've been in recent years have been like, oh, we got this by a mile, no problem. Even in matchups where I think we've been more talented and better at times. But it's just, this is this bad. This team is in this bad state, leaned as heavily as they have into tanking. This should be one that you just take them to task in every way. At all 3 phases of the game, you should beat them heartily. And so if it doesn't, I will be right there with Brendon on this, in that it will be supremely disappointing that you can't have your team ready to go week one. The coaching staff went out ready to go. The players wouldn't be up to playing that week one. I would be leaning on blaming those factors. It won't be because the Lions have outdone something to you To me, I don't think McVay just out brilliants you that badly, where he's just such a chess match guy that he can, so out turn you that. Like you said, Carroll's had some recent history and maybe kind of countering some of that in some of their recent games. So that's not been as much at the forefront that you can just count it. Like in 19, by the end of 19, you might have been going, man, does this guy just have Carroll's number? At the end of the 19, it's been 3 years. He's kind of every year giving it to your offensively. And you go, boy, maybe this is the, the Achilles here for Carroll. But Carroll's turned it around a little bit in recent times playing him. So that shouldn't be the expected part from the game. So
agreed.
Well, that definitely does cover us, I think, here for this upcoming matchup, Brendan. I want to do one last little bit of discussion to button this out about the trade the Seahawks make, because this is really, for me, in doing these channels and talking about the Seahawks like we do, it's these kind of situations that it tickle the brain for me as much as anything, because this is roster building. This is philosophy. This is what is the right time to strike. Is it best to go now, or is there a better player down the line that you'll spend less money for, less draft capital for if you wait down the line? When you look at this situation right now, in your gut, and I've got an answer on this one too, is it one where you feel like there will be a better deal down the line? I know I've asked you a little bit about this, but I think this is an ever-changing answer a little bit week to week, and because market conditions change. Bosa signed, Chris Jones signed, DeBoer Buckner becomes open on the market, maybe potentially at some point here soon. Do you feel like the gamble's worth it here? That there's going to be that guy that comes out on the market available to you for them to strike? We both agree that we think they're looking to do something else by this freeing up of the money. Mm-hmm. But that question comes down: is it? You mentioned maybe it's a Wormley. You mentioned maybe it's over here. But with what you think and feel, and this is a feel thing, it's an emotional based thing. I don't have something you're going to be able to go off of saying, well, I have this as far as sources go that indicate they're going to do this. Just off the gut instinct, though, where does this team lead to utilizing this now $9 million of resources?
I don't feel like they're going to do anything big. I don't feel like they're going to swing for the fences here. I don't think the money that you freed up is enough when you consider what's going to happen with your cap next year. It's not like next year's cap is clean and you've got a ton of space to fit stuff in. Mm-hmm. It's pretty packed. Again, Geno, Metcalf, Draymond, those are, I think, 3 of the big ones. You've still got Jamal money. You've still got Diggs money. I don't think there's a big swing here. I think it's on the table. I don't want to eliminate it. You can always create cap space if you absolutely have to. But I think it's more likely that this team tries to find something a little more in the middle, be it a signing of one of these remaining free agents. And by the way, I got no beef with that. I think guys like Chris Wormley and Matt Ioannidis are pretty good, and I don't know why they're still available. Maybe they're asking for too much money, and maybe they didn't want to bother showing up for preseason. Maybe they're like, I don't need to show up for that crap. I can work out at home like Walter Jones used to do. Remember Walter Jones holding out every year?
I have no doubt that a guy like Ndamukong Suh is absolutely doing that. Like, I think he's going to be another gun for hire at some point that tries to, week 7, week 8, like, hey, bring me on for 8 weeks.
Yeah. So maybe it's a trade for somebody a little bit lower level than a Chris Jones or Aaron Donald. Like we talk about Grover Stewart a lot. There's probably a bunch of guys out there that we don't even know about. We don't even know their name, but they would be perfectly adequate rotational pieces on this defensive line. That would make us better.
Agreed.
I feel like that's more likely. I don't think there's quite enough going on here for us to take the big swing. I'm just not feeling it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tremendously hard to do. And if they did, Brendan, it would make me feel like they really do feel like this year the doors have opened in a way that maybe even a year out when they're making their plans in the rebuild process, they didn't anticipate it was going to get this open in the NFC. Aaron Rodgers move on, everybody's retired. You don't have a lot of running, good teams or good quarterbacks, and it is just so opened up. But it is a little bit more to a mid-tier deal. So I guess I'll ask you on a just bottom base, what's the better route from your standpoint to go with that eye to the future? Sign just the Ioannidis guy, the Wormley guy, or if we go mid-grade tier, would you go with the Leonard Williams or Grover Stewart? What would be the route you prefer?
You think Leonard Williams would be cheap?
I think Leonard Williams is on the final year of a contract. Lawrence signed his contract extension. And so I believe that if the Giants find themselves in a position where this is obviously built on, from my standpoint, Brendan, I think the trade that happens at this point, if it does happen, is going to be by a team that thinks they're somewhat of a sub-contending state that then finds themselves falling off through the first 4 or 5 weeks before the trade deadline. And the Giants, to me, could be that team because they are in a tough division. There was a little bit of a smoke and mirrors approach to what they accomplished last year from my standpoint of things. And you've already paid Lawrence. So you're not going to pay with the money you've now invested in Daniel Jones, with probably the money you're going to have to eventually come up with Saquon Barkley. I don't think you're going to come back and pay a Leonard Williams now that's kind of in that Chris Jones age of things, 28, 29 years old. So I think that if they get into a place where they start out 1-4, 1-5, that becomes a player that maybe is put out on the market for an asset for the Giants to recoup.
I'm pretty on board with the trade idea. I think the trade asset you would have to give up would be pretty minor.
Yeah.
Like Grover Stewart, what, a 4th round pick, you think?
Probably.
Like guys like that don't really go for that much. Again, the example I always use, Tampa Bay, the year they won the Super Bowl 2 years ago, Vita Vea gets hurt early in the season. They traded a 7th round pick for a nose tackle. I think it was McClendon from New York.
Mm-hmm.
And he was okay. He was good enough. Yeah. You can find guys like that for really, really cheap. So I would be pretty on board with the trade.
Yeah, you absolutely can, especially because you're not needing a guy with the pass rush. You just need as much of the guy that can be a run stuffer. You got the pass rush enough in other places. We just need to be able to kind of hem that part up of the particular game. So I like you would prefer the trade. Let's also remember we got the extra 3rd round pick from the Denver Broncos this year. So you have extra draft capital to go make a trade. We now have the cap space, Brendan, now that Jamal Adams has freed up his money. So you're sitting on some nice little items here to jump, to pounce when the time is right, whenever that time may be. Mm-hmm. Paul Third, thank you for the $2 donation. I appreciate you on that. He says, Hawks 34-7. Let's go. Cam Akers better off calling in sick.
Honestly, I feel like Akers is the only guy in this game who concerns me in any way. And that's partially because of our run defense being a work in progress, partially because he's been good against us before, partially because his offensive line is actually pretty decent. But I'm not really afraid of Aaron Donald. I just feel like we can throw so much stuff at him in a game like this. We can handle Aaron Donald. I'm not really afraid of Matt Stafford because he doesn't have his favorite receiver.
Yeah.
But Cam Akers could be okay.
Cam Akers could be. And you ran for that back in 2020, 220 yards in the playoffs, 4.8 yard per carry average. And one of those was of course, against the Seahawks. So right. Like you said, he has given us some fits and troubles at times. He's a hard runner. He's not going to, have a lot of negative plays. And if that offensive line can find holes against this front, especially in those A and B gap runs, we didn't talk about it for the defense, but a big part of probably stopping the run today is going to be how do you handle the A gaps? And then how do you handle the fly sweeps? I mean, it's really going to come down to those two spots because the Rams are going to hit you between the two where they probably think they're catching you leaning the other way. And how you clean that stuff up, how you keep your gap integrity, how your safeties come down and help in the tackling and your corners help in the tackling game are going to determine whether you're not able to take that away from the Rams. Carroll at his forefront wants to create a team that's going to, turn you into one-dimensional attack and one-dimensional from the standpoint of pass, not one-dimensional from the standpoint of run only. So that's what they're going to want to take away first and foremost. But I agree with you, Brendan. It's a big key in coming out of this game with a win is keeping that running game under control, not letting them control the game, control the time of possession, eat the chains, keep your offense off the field. Like we saw the Lions trying to do tonight, and they did a pretty good job. I mean, they kind of snuck this one away from the Kansas City Chiefs, but they did do a good job as much as I didn't like as much their conservative nature of leaning in and just trying to drain that clock throughout the course of this game and reduce the amount of possessions in this game. And with it, the amount of times Mahomes could come out and cause them harm.
Yeah. That's basically the only recipe you could imagine for them winning this game, right?
Agreed. Yeah, it really is. I mean, we thought, and maybe we were wrong for this to think a little bit of, well, this will be a shootout. You got Lions and high-powered offense and Chiefs and high-powered offense, so it should be like a 31-28 game kind of thing. But no, I think a lot of it was on the back of the Lions kind of decide, no, we're going to, run a lot of first down runs for 3 yards. Montgomery like 10 carries for 36 yards or something in this game. And we're just going to stay and lean on it if we got to, and we'll slide out of this win. Good on them. Good on them. And boy, that Lions team looking every bit like the team I thought they was going to win that division, Brendan.
They should definitely win that division. Do you think the Vikings are going to be any good this year?
I think their offense is going to be productive, but I think the defense is going to continue to be a complete work in progress.
Yeah, they won, I think, 13 games last year. I don't think they get to half of that this year. I think maybe they get to 7 actually. So
yeah,
I think that's a team that's going to fall off big time. So yeah,
I think it's a division that probably ends up with a lot of teams in that 7 to 8 win mark. Like I can see the Bears and the Packers being in that same place, and then the Lions getting out of it with like a 10, 11 win season ends up winning them the division. I think that's how that boils down for them. I don't see the Lions like a 12-win team. I think 11 wins is their ceiling.
Yeah, that's what I had to.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. It'll be fun previewing them. They played an interesting game here against the Chiefs. They've got some players, Branch out there, the rookie at Alabama with the pick six. Hutchinson, boy, he looked every bit as good as he did last year. He was active all over the place. Kaminsky on the inside defensive tackle, and Goff shows you he can sometimes do just enough. It isn't always like artistic with Goff, man. He's sometimes rough to watch from the quarterback position. He threw one that got knocked down today. It was a dead duck when it left his hand. It didn't take like 20 yards down the field to see it dead. It was like the wings were down by the sides. The head was flapped over, Go, boy, he throws a brutal ball sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes you wonder how he went number one overall. Like, he's not mobile. He's not smart. He's actually the opposite of smart. Remember all the stuff about how McVay basically had to think for him.
Yeah. But you still saw it. You still saw it tonight when he drops back and he sees it and it's clear to him. He can look very functional and good. But if he drops back and things are a little bit muddled up, he's the opposite of the off-script guy, and I agree with you. I didn't understand it as much at the time either. I mean, he didn't have the great production coming out of college with California. It wasn't like, well, he's thrown for 3,500 yards back, like Penix seasons that he'll put up. It was a lot of this, like, well, he's got the size and it's the throws real good velocity. And yeah, but I mean, I don't know. He's just always, to me, underwhelming a little bit. He's got his share of people that like him. I think he's underrated, but I think he's rated appropriately.
Yeah, sounds about right to me.
Paul Third does mention Brian Flores is there with the Vikes as their new DC, so maybe that'll help them improve on that just a little bit with that, Paul. That's true with that. The problem I have with him is not as much just to being a schematic thing. Obviously, they tried to change to the Fangio scheme. They did what we did, which is they went from a 4-3 to a 3-4 without actually bringing on the personnel to accommodate the 3-4 change, and it failed. Shocker, yeah. So we'll see how it goes this year with them on that with that change. But there, to me, it's about, for me, Paul, personnel being light. It's that they're just not really all that talented on the defensive side of the ball. Harrison Smith getting up there in age, kind of getting long in the tooth. They lost.
Still there. Harrison Smith is still there.
Still there rolling, man. Still there rolling. And but they did move on from Zadarius Smith, so now all they got's really Danielle Hunter out there, and
Danielle Hunter, yeah.
Brian Brees.
Do they still have Eric Kendricks? Or am I like 6 years behind on that one?
Nope, him and Harrison Smith, man. They're the Energizer Bunnies. They keep going. They're not at the place they were at 4 years ago, where they were one of the better at their position in the entire league. They've just got that a lot of football getting a little bit old. Team Money Israel, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate you becoming a member and also the donation. So thank you very much for that. He says, I listen to you both every day in Seattle while at work. You keep it 100 and keep me updated with the Hawk news. Your work is priceless. I'm all in. Go Hawks. Wow, what a kind comment there, Team Money. Thank you.
Thank you, Team Money. Thank you
so very much. That's certainly the aim for both me and Brendan. We try to work really hard at making sure that we are up to date, that we do know what we're talking about, that we're not out of school. If we give you guys an opinion or something that we think is what's going on in a situation, there's usually a lot that's gone into our determination to arrive at a conclusion. So thank you for that, man. It's good to know that that's coming off in the right manner. That is definitely the goal that we're trying to seek out here and what we're both trying to accomplish on our separate channels here. So thank you so much. Very kind of you, man. Glad to have you listening. There's something nice about it, Brendan, that somebody at work just kind of listen to you, like I'm sure you've done in the past. You've been in, I think you're in IT as well. You've got something in the background as you're working on something, and something kind of comforting doing these channels, that knowing people, that's how people are kind of, tearing through your content, hearing your content, like we've done in the past for probably different people that we've listened to and whatnot.
Right. Absolutely.
All right. Well, Team Money, thank you for that donation, finishing us up in a really nice way. Me and Brendan do believe that this is going to be a pretty easy win for your Seattle Seahawks this year. Not without maybe some troubles. Not this first game. Not without, there's going to be a couple moments that they're going to make you nervous. It's not going to be the Seahawks if they didn't make you a little bit nervous at one point or another. But we are expecting them to come away from this victory and come away with it comfortably in the first game of the season. So hopefully our fellow Seahawks fans can prepare themselves for being mighty happy here after this first game of the year. Like starting out this way, Brendan, don't you? Kind of start where you start out with a nice opponent. It's nice, kind of just a workable opponent, as opposed to getting somebody that would be just completely hell to deal with in the opening matchup.
I mean, we've been winning our openers for a few years in a row here, right? Because we beat the Bengals. 2019, 2020, we beat the Falcons.
There we go.
2021, we beat the Colts. Last year, we beat the Broncos. So we're kind of used to starting out on a good note.
We are. Let's keep it rolling, Brendon. Let's keep it rolling this year. Let's make it a yearly thing that we just get that opening dub no matter what. So, but I like having this game versus like if we had to get the Cowboys or something with the first matchup.
Right.
This one works to me so much better as a
Mhm.
fit for the opening game. But we get to see how it goes now, folks. It's all about to be live. Off season's over. It's about to be real deal. What are your Seahawks going to do this year? They've built up maybe one of the most talented football teams that we've seen here in their entire organization's history, but they are damn young. Can Coach Carroll take this young crew of pups to the promised land like he has before, both in college and in the pros? Can he get that out of them this upcoming year? Are the Seattle Seahawks going to make a big over-the-top move to put them over the top this year? It's going to be fun to buck. It's going to be fun to track, monitor, and see if it actually goes down. But this team is going to be, I think, Brendon, no matter what, an entertaining team. And it's going to be a fun season to watch and break down as we go through and do this throughout the course of the year, man. So thank you, as always, for doing this. I really appreciate you coming on in the house here and chopping it up with me as we ever do. And we will be back on Tuesday, 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. We'll be doing the shows 7 o'clock Tuesday, 8 o'clock on Thursday will be how this goes. We're trying to do on Thursday a little bit right as the game's about to finish up here as far as Thursday night goes. So we'll be back on Tuesday with the game wrap up here on my side of it. Until that time, I hope me and Brendon don't have to remind you. I hope we don't have to let you know as we're about 2 days away from the opening game. You should be hyped. You should be on the edge of your chair. Your heart should be palpitating. But if it's not, if you aren't in that state of mind, then you need to get there right now. Let us remind you right now. Don't you ever forget. Keep it to the forefront. Your team might be out there doing some special things this year. You want to keep your eye on that prize. And do not ever forget. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.